Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk Pilgrimage. Today in this video we're going to do two things. We're going to actually talk about a historical pilgrimage text from the 6th century, and we're also going to look at the spirituality of arrival. What do pilgrims do when they arrive? And specifically we're going to apply that to the city of Jerusalem. I'm standing just outside the east gate of Jerusalem. It goes by a number of names. Most commonly it's referred to now as the Lion's Gate, but over the centuries it's been referred to St. Stephen's Gate and also Mary's Gate. Now, there's a pilgrim that came to Jerusalem around the year 570. He came from northern Italy, from the town of Piacenza. We don't know his name, so he's often just referred to as the Piacenza Pilgrim. Now, he comes from Constantinople. He first of all enters the Galilee. He sees Samaria, Jacob's well, goes to Jordan River, and so he enters Jerusalem from the east, he approaches from the east, sees the Mount of Olives, Gethsemane, and then he comes and he approaches the city right here. In fact, not only do we have the modern day Lion's Gate, but just a little bit over on the other shoulder, archaeologists have found indications of where the gate was on the east side at the time of the Piacenza Pilgrim, so starting in the 2nd century going into the Byzantine period. And even though the Piacenza Pilgrim had already seen the holy sites like the wedding of Cana, Nazareth, the Jordan River, once he comes to Jerusalem, what he says is that he stopped, he kneeled, and he kissed the ground before he enters into the gates. Well, ask the simple question about why he did that and what, for instance, the city of Jerusalem meant to him. When we do an act of arrival like that, not only do we demark it or signal it as sacred space, somehow that place, that space is different than spaces before it, but in a way we also mark sacred time, that the time that's going to go into the city is going to be different than the time beforehand. So that's the historical text. That's a text I work with from the 6th century, that even when you've got these pilgrim practices from so long ago that somehow, in some ways, people still do today. We might have scenes of people getting off airplanes and kissing the tarmac, and that sense of kissing the ground. And I'll just throw it back to you in terms of what that act means. But let's think more generally about the spirituality of arrival, about how marking it can be significant, and what the different phases are of arriving into a holy place. And I will use the Holy Land as a case study, as an example, but you can think of other locations as well. First of all, when does arrival happen? Arrival happens when you're on the plane and you land on the tarmac. It can be getting off the plane. Of course, it's going through passport control and making sure that we've got a visa, that we're actually into the country. And if nothing else, true arrival, which for some people almost seems like it never happens, is finding your bags at the airport and knowing that you have everything that you brought. Of course, one of the pilgrimage lessons is that sometimes we don't need all the baggage that we thought we needed. But anyway, that's always an arrival moment for me when I actually see my suitcase and everything's there. And of course, getting on the train or a van or a taxi, driving, let's say from the Ben Gurion Airport, some people cross over from Jordan, and that sense of coming into Jerusalem and seeing the city walls for the first time, much like our Piacenza Pilgrim. Sometimes with pilgrims, this sense of what does it mean to arrive into the Holy Land? What does it mean to be into the Promised Land? What does it mean to be here? Whether it's the city of Jerusalem or the Holy Land in general. One thing I do with pilgrims is sometime on the very first day, take them to the Jordan River. That's a sense of an act of renewing baptism, which is very important. Of course, we're going to go to the Jordan River at some point in the course anyway, if not at the very beginning, soon after we commemorate Jesus' baptism, as we start talking about his early ministry. That the Jordan River becomes one of those wonderful liminal spaces of crossing from the wilderness, or crossing from the profane, from the ordinary, into the sense of promise, but promise with challenge, promise, but a promise to obey the Torah or to follow the precepts of the Bible. But it becomes a time for pilgrims to say, what does it mean that we're here? What is arrival? And so first of all, for any pilgrims going anywhere, just as there's a sense of the spirituality of departure from home and what that means to get everything in order, or even to leave the threshold and cross out of your front door, what does it mean to arrive? Not only the rituals. Now, I've also said that sometimes arrival takes place in phases, or there's more than one arrival moment. Another big arrival moment for pilgrims in Jerusalem is to be on the Mount of Olives and see the expanse, see that classic view of Jerusalem. So at Jerusalem, there's many arrival moments, but what does that mean? I'm going to throw that back to you, and I'm going to ask in the comments, one, to mention places you've visited and when and at what point you felt the arrival. Actually seeing a place, actually be in a place. Some people, and I've read this in pilgrim journals, have a sense that they've never truly arrived into the Holy Land until they feel they have had a connection with God. Well, that can be one way that people also sense when they have arrived, even though, and this is for another video, there's a bit of a kind of warning there, because sometimes connections to God in the Holy Land can be elusive, and we don't know when that's going to happen, and you could be here for several days just waiting to arrive and never get here. But more kind of more concrete, more kind of in terms of ritual, more in terms of setting up the days ahead, and that sense of the distinction between profane time and sacred time, between other places and whatever you think Jerusalem means, what the Holy Land means as the place of Christian faith, as the place of the acts of salvation of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection, but also as a city that is shared among the Abrahamic faiths, a city that's both full of conflict, but also one that's a sense of paradise and a sense of God's presence. So you arrive in order to enjoy the presence of being here in the city, and we wish you a blessed sojourn as your time in Jerusalem or other places that you make pilgrimage journeys and pilgrimage destinations. So we'll see you next time on Let's Talk Pilgrimage.